Hello, Mayor Black-Burke here, having a really open and candid conversation in regards to the fiscal year 2026 budget for our beautiful town and also the upcoming referendum on May 13th. I'm joined by,
David Furie, President of the Windsor Board of Education.
thank you, Mr. Fury, or should I say Mr. President. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. But we want to talk with all of you in our wonderful town just about the fiscal year budget and the upcoming referendum. So we're just going to have a conversation about that. And Mr. President, I have a couple of questions that just want to ask, but we can just talk
Okay.
through the budget.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So how long have you lived in Windsor?
That's a good question. About 35 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
And raised a family?
Yes, my wife is from Windsor, and so this was a place we came back with Grandma and Grandpa for the kids as we had them.
I like that. Grandma and grandpas, they're super important. I grew up here in Windsor. My parents moved here in the late 70s, and my mom still lives in my childhood home here in Windsor. So being in Windsor, it's not our first time going through a fiscal year budget conversation and or referendum, but I think we are all recognizing and understanding that we are in really fiscal uncertain times, and it's a conversation that we need to have in regards to the budget.
I agree. This is a difficult year. As we know, this is the second year of revaluation in town, and I appreciate the council splitting it up into 2 years versus having a big hit in year one, which would have been devastating to people. So I think from the Board of Ed side, I think what the council has done in doing that. And also I think it's important to know too, things that both on the town side and the board side that we've done to mitigate the effects for residents. And as you mentioned, being here, we're both residents and taxpayers.
And taxpayers.
So we feel the hurt as well.
Definitely. And I think as we think about the reevaluation, we chose to split it up into 2 years because we were trying to lessen that pinch. And it was a pinch, especially as homeowners, just understanding how much the increase felt, and we saw it on paper. You're like, what is happening? But again, I do applaud the town council and even prior councilors who may not be sitting currently at the dais for working through our most recent reevaluation. So could you talk a little bit about what's the process that goes into the BOE preparing their budget?
Our process begins almost when the school year kicks off. We have all the principals and their assistant principals start looking at what programs they have, what programs have worked, what might not work. The superintendent is very clear of if something is not working, we just can't keep doing it. By the time the superintendent has gone through the leaderships of the schools, including parents, about what some needs are and looking at numbers. We're big into data these days, data-driven decisions on what's working so we can get achievement to the best we can for our students. So the superintendent came out really with a fairly lean budget, even though initially it was a 6.88% increase. And some of the drivers of that were very unusual high healthcare costs. We are self-insured, as the town staff are as well, and we did have a number of folks that have been ill and have, or spouses or children who've been ill, and we haven't seen that kind of increase. So a big portion of our increase in our budget is for that. And realistically, most of our budget is contractual.
Yes.
The teachers union, you sat in on the teachers union negotiations yourself, and they get increases. We need to be competitive. And realistically, if we didn't pay the teachers what they're due, because we're considered a well-off town, chances are we would lose in an arbitration. So it's the right thing to do, but also legally it's the best way of going about it. And unfortunately, again, we're a large geographic area, and we have a large busing contract
Yes.
that does go up. It's got incentives and goes up each year. So it's again, a difficult financial situation. The board, however, looked at what the superintendent proposed, and even though I normally would have supported that budget, I just knew we were in the second year, as did most of the council. This is a bipartisan budget as far as the Democrats and Republicans. Most of them on both sides of the aisle supported this 1% decrease in
Okay.
the superintendent's budget, but it comes with pain. I'm a big proponent of early childhood education, and we had to cut out our preschool program that's there, which was a lottery system program. We still have preschool for those students with special needs, so that still will continue. But that was a big pill, but it's not required. We are not required to have that program, even though most of us support that program.
And so in regards to and sorry to interrupt you, but I think what you just said was really, really important, thinking about what are some of the components that were in the reduction. And so preschool, there was a reduction in preschool. Windsor still has a preschool program, and Mr. Furie is going to answer the rest of that in a moment. We still have a preschool program, but there was a reduction in the size and how many students could be taken into our preschool program this year as a part of that reduction.
That's correct, and not something that we, as I said, not something we wanted to do at all. In fact, we were hoping to possibly in the future build on that program, but we also wanted to do it a little bit upfront now, so parents can prepare, unfortunately, for the next school year. As far as other cuts, unfortunately, we had to make, we tried to do it as far away from the classroom, the actual classroom teachers, trying not to increase the class sizes, because we found, we believe, and the data supports it, that the smaller classes, especially in early elementary school, have led to better results that we've had. And so we've wanted to keep that. A number of jobs where an incumbent had left during the school year will not be filled next year. So this year and then next year as well, many people will be doubling up on their responsibilities. And another area that we've taken from is in the plant maintenance. We didn't really want to touch major maintenance. We knew we had some problems in the past. All our school buildings, unfortunately, are very old. I know we actually have a committee that's been set up with board members and town councilors to look at the long-range plan for our buildings.
Yes. No, thank you for that really in-depth explanation in regards to how the Board of Education gets to their budget. What I'm taking away is that there's a lot of thought that goes into it, with Dr. Hill and his team presenting that to the full Board of Education. And then from there are real conversation and deliberations about what is going to happen. I know there are open forums that citizens can attend, parents can attend throughout this process. And then, as you said, it was a bipartisan vote that was taken in April, March.
Actually, February.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
We presented to the council in April.
That's my budget.
We start this process very early.
Yes.
And I know we're only one budget of many that the council will look at. So, and I'm glad you mentioned kind of a little bit more about the process, because we go through page by page of the budget book that the superintendent, and you were on the board previously, and you know the drill, the process that goes through there, where board members are supposed to know what the next meeting will be, to look at the budget book on their own, submit questions in advance is preferred, so staff can have answers. If they don't, if there's some questions that come up during a discussion, the next time we meet, we'll have answers to those from Dr. Hill or Dr. Hill's staff.
No, thank you, David, for sharing that. And much the same on the town side. So we begin our budget process in December. So in December, we are talking and trying to determine like what are the parameters that we are going to look at in regards to our budget. So we do have a finance committee, the town council made up of the 9. Within that 9, there is a finance committee. Councilor Naeem chairs that finance committee along with Councilor Eleveld and Councilor Smith, and now Councilor King has stepped into Councilor Smith's role. And then in December, Mr. Souza, Peter Souza, the town manager, he's starting in December, having conversations with each department. So the Board of Education, yes, the largest department that the town has, but then each of the departments that report into the town manager, they are having conversations in regards to what? What is the need? Are there efficiencies that we should be looking for? So that happens in December. So similar to what Dr. Hill and Ms. Batchelder would be doing on the board side. And then in March, because you take your vote in February, and then in March, Mr. Souza and team, they put out a proposed budget. And again, that's another opportunity for Windsor residents to chime in. He does host a session where he is sharing that proposed budget. There's even a budget in brief. I know you have the updated copy, but it kind of looks like that. And it's like a proposed,
can see this here, but
it's a proposed budget in brief that is put out to the community that everyone can peruse, look through, and it does include the Board of Education budget. And then after that, in April, the town council, we take about, I would say 2 full weeks, not meeting every day, but 2 weeks where we are going through each department. They come, they present to us, we do the same, we get to ask questions. If there's something that needs to be followed up on, they can do that as well. You know, in years past, we've asked the Board of Education to present, and we've even invited the Board of Education to come back for a second bite at the apple if there's more questions or things that we just need to double click on to understand further. And then after that process in April, we look to vote on the proposed budget, and then that budget is what will go eventually to referendum.
I know when we presented in April, when myself, Mr. Lockhart, who's chair of the Finance Committee, and a number of years ago, we have a little different process. We now have a Finance Committee, which we call a Committee of the Whole. In case there's some people biting, at the bit there of getting their questions in, we decided let's have everyone see it all at once, have everybody in the room being able to ask questions, not having maybe to text a question or send a question to somebody on the Finance Committee to do that. And when we presented, in many other years, I've come and I said, this is a maintenance budget. This year I said, this is less than a maintenance budget. And it was less than a maintenance budget even as presented by Dr. Hill, because Dr. Hill froze our major maintenance, our repair budget. But over the year, with inflation and the cost of labor, we can do less with that same amount of money than we did in past years. And we've had, even before additional cuts, we've had several people doing multiple jobs. We haven't hired another person.
And that's one of the pieces when we think about the fiscal year 2026 budget. I think on both sides, and we really talk about the Board of Education separately than the other departments, not because it's not a department, but the Board of Education, it's sometimes hard to understand, Mr. Furie. It is a department within the town, just happens to be the largest one. So a lot of times it is etched out differently, but I would say on both sides, the Board of Education, along with the town council budget, there aren't new positions. There are no new full-time positions that have been added to what we are calling a maintenance budget. It really is, or as you said, it's a less than maintenance. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay, less than maintenance budget. And just really want folks to understand that no new full-time positions have been added, right? Correct. Dr. Hill, along with Mr. Souza and team, they have found a way to keep hiring down. That could mean that positions that maybe should have been filled aren't being filled. Again, spreading the work around differently assuring that we aren't going to have any detriments to service. So services will still be delivered, classrooms will still be staffed, but no new positions. Did I get that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
I know on our side
Yes.
that's correct. And we're still feeling the effects of the pandemic.
Yep.
I take students often from Windsor High School to the Capitol on a day of lobbying day, and all the students know what grade they were in. And when in 2020, all of a sudden they were being educated at home. And for the following year, often a different system of partial hybrid. Sometimes you were in the school, sometimes you weren't. And they all know that there was learning loss that we're still trying to catch up with. And so when we had some positions that were luckily funded by the federal government for social emotional learning, because there was a lot of trauma of kids who at this age and most of the ages, they like being in school and they like being with their friends.
True.
They don't like necessarily being home watching on a Zoom call or on camera. So we have incorporated over the years, not this year, but we have incorporated some of those positions because we thought how important not only physical health, but also mental health is.
And thank you, Mr. Furie. Do want to say, I know I've said it before at town council meetings, even coming to Board of Education meetings, I do applaud our Board of Education and Dr. Hill for being so fiscally prudent, especially during the pandemic, on how they went about using and utilizing those ESSER, ARPA, everybody uses a different term, dollars that did come in from the federal government. Many school districts really hung their hat on those dollars and are in quite a bind right now. But Windsor was able to move differently with those dollars, addressing the immediate needs, but now finding ways to absorb many of those roles and or positions. And that's really kudos to just the management of the district, as well as the oversight given by the Board of Education. As we're talking about a citizen's guide to the Windsor budget, another document, probably can't see it, but hopefully we will be able to get the website where you can find this information. But this is a great one-pager that talks about the citizen's guide to the Windsor town budget. Touches on the Board of Ed, how they go about it, how the town budget works, talks about other community forums. Actually, there's one tonight, a community budget forum. Today is Wednesday, May 7th. Don't know when you're going to watch this, but there is one tonight.
Poquonock School.
Poquonock School at 6:30 p.m. But even if you miss the budget forums, I know that there'll be other opportunities to hear, learn, and understand about the upcoming referendum. Also want to just talk a little bit about what is in this budget. So we do know that there is no new full-time positions. We avoided teacher layoffs, but we are also expanding tax relief for our veterans and seniors. Our veterans and our seniors. For me, that's a win. We understand that we are really looking at lean years ahead as far as just the cost of inflation, everything's going up. But in this particular budget, we have found a way to really support what I like to say are most vulnerable populations, our students, as well as I call them the wisdom group. Are you part of that wisdom group, David?
I'm part of that age group, but
I'm just
no
bothering you.
comment.
No comment. No. I put you on the spot. I'm looking forward to being a part of that wisdom group. Are you kidding me? Oh my goodness. Yes. I'm looking forward to I call them the golden years when you're a senior citizen. But those are our most vulnerable populations here in our town, and we want to ensure that we are taking care of them. So in this budget, we are, yes, supporting our schools, but also supporting our seniors and our veterans through expanding our tax relief.
And I'm also on the Windsor Library Association, so I was glad to see that there really were not cuts to our two great libraries, and especially the Wilson branch, which not only is a great library in the Wilson area, but has a tutoring program right in the community there, where volunteers are there to help students who need that extra boost. And so I'm glad to see that there were not cuts. Our library stayed open or had books available even during COVID where people could come and pick up books. So kudos to that group there.
Agreed. I like the plug. Windsor Library
Yeah,
Association. I like that. That was
good.
good. Okay.
One of the things that's come up that I think you can speak to, and I always say, well, if we have this rainy day or cash available, why can't we use more than 2 million? And over the years, people have said, well, if you use 2 million this year, that 2 million has to be at the start of the following year. Otherwise, you then have a hole.
So I think how you described it is exactly correct. So if you take from the rainy day fund, and some folks would say it is definitely raining because we are all feeling this, you do have to determine how is it that you're going to then put it back. So you use the term filling the hole. I think that's exactly it. So we don't want to be in a position where we have become reliant on always going to that fund. But the fund is there, I would say, for times like this when we are trying to find ways to offset, to lessen the pinch or the burden. So I'm glad you brought that up, that yes, we are taking monies from that rainy day fund to assist this year again with this tax increase. Great point, Mr. Furie. Thank you. All right. Well, I know we are probably running close to time, but a few things that I do want to make sure that we do mention is that one, to maintain our quality of life and to avoid further cuts, we really need to get this referendum passed. What's the date?
It's May 13th. It's a Tuesday. The polls are open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Yes. And if you need a ride to the polls, the hotline number is 860-980-9287. So I'll say that again, 860-980-9287. And this year, we are looking at a property tax increase of 4.91%. That is required. Someone shared with me, I have not done this math myself, Mr. Furie, but I'm going to quote it, that it is a little over $20 a month per household. $20 a month, that's the average. And you're probably saying, but Mayor Black-Burke, I'm not trying to trivialize in any way, shape, or form, because that $20 a month, we know, I have a school-aged child, and listen, that can go towards snacks, school lunch costs, all of those things. But in thinking about it, that's probably what it would average out to be, is about $20 per month for the average household. So that could be more or less depending on your household and depending on what you're looking at. Our tax rate will be 28.45 mils, one of the lowest in the region. And I think it's important sometimes to share what those mill rates are across the region. So that's
a reduction from last year.
It is a reduction from last year's mill rate, taking it down some. So in this budget, what we are doing, we are ensuring that no new full-time positions were added. We avoided teacher layoffs, supporting our veterans and low-income seniors, really looking at that senior tax relief, and ensuring that we are maintaining services, our public safety, our libraries, and so much more. So we don't want to disrupt the services in our town. So we're asking everybody to get out and vote on May 13th. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I agree. I want this to be one and done, this referendum, and because there's significant consequences if we don't pass this budget.
There absolutely, and that's what I want you to touch on. What are some of those consequences?
Well, on the board side, as I mentioned, both Dr. Hill and the board wanted to keep cuts away from classrooms as much as we could. There are some teachers who will retire. We won't replace them, so could be some increases in class size. I don't know that for a fact, so I don't want to throw that out to people. But basically, we would, if we had to reduce another 1%, we'd probably lose about 9 or 10 teachers, because we don't get to pick which teachers that we end up laying. We lay off. Layoffs can be done based on the grades, but teachers have tenure they've been here a number of years, they have seniority. So we would take positions that are away, often with teachers who may make less money. So it's probably, it could easily be more than 9 or 10 teachers, depending on what's going on. And there are other programs, leadership programs like the Junior Air Force ROTC, where we've historically had between 50 and 100 students who do amazing extra community service. Windsor High School, we require students to do 20 hours during the course of their time at Windsor High School, and many of the ROTC kids have hundreds of community service hours. And it's been a program that's been very successful. We've had many students go on to college with free rides because of their involvement there. So a good program, but it's not a required program. This is an extra.
Right. Definitely. And I can't stress enough, as we are looking at this upcoming referendum, I always like to say to my neighbors when I'm having conversation with other folks, like what happens next? So it is our hope and our prayer that the referendum does prevail, but after, we need to be having further conversations with our state legislators about the state property tax formula and how it impacts local municipalities. Much of what we are feeling is due to the every 5-year revaluation that is mandated by the state. It's mandated by the state. So you think about a home, and they may have had a tax increase of $693, right? Based on the value of the home, right? The appreciated value of the home. But when you think about it, looking at the dollar amount, maybe 68%, 69% of that is attributed to revaluation. Right? And so we're hoping it prevails. We're hoping we get past May 13th and that the budget does pass. But the call to action, I would say, to Windsor residents, to our citizens, is to work with our local legislators in really raising the flag to have a conversation about what's next. How are we working with those at the state to determine how we can figure out what needs to be done? How can we find another formula so that every 5 years, towns and cities are not in this predicament where we're going through this type of revaluation, or we are shouldering
with
this.
Revaluation, could it be that commercial could be taxed at a different mill rate than residential?
Yes.
Because we've had the luxury of having, in particular, the Day Hill corridor with so many businesses, but we found out that businesses such as the Hartford and Voya, after the pandemic, didn't need to have people coming into the buildings.
Right.
A manufacturer may still need all the staff, but those buildings, some of our big taxpayers, be it Conica, Voya, the Hartford, are not there anymore. So, and for others who have, still their property has not gone up as much as residential. Residential has really increased. So if you're selling your property and maybe moving someplace other than the East or West Coast,
right?
You
Maybe
may
somewhere
be able
in the
to
middle.
take your money, but if you're living there, what good does that property, the fact that if you're going to be staying in your home, you're not helped by the situation,
Correct.
at least immediately.
And I just think we are at a place here in Connecticut where we need to have a conversation about the formula, the property tax formula. We know that that's how many things in municipalities, cities, and towns are funded, is through the property tax. So we understand the need for it, but is there a different way to fund this? So I can't stress enough that revaluation, this is year 2, and the amount really, really depended on the appreciation of that particular home. So yours versus mine looks totally different.
We just can't say it's a 4 point some percent increase, because you have to take the other part of it, the home And as you had indicated,
Yes.
different homes, so not everybody will have the same
Not everybody,
percentage increase.
not everyone will have the same
But the
percentage
town
increase.
you can go online.
See, Mr. Furie, I didn't have to cue you up for that one. You can go online, and there is a tax calculator for your home, your motor vehicle taxes. Our message here today for this candid conversation, and David, I feel like we might need to do a part two, maybe after the reval passes. We might need to do a part two for what's to come. But want to leave you with this. May 13th, Tuesday, May 13th, is the referendum. We encourage everyone to go out, exercise your voice. We do understand that there are lean years ahead of us, and all of us are feeling the pinch and the pain of rising costs all around us. What I could buy at Costco for $200 a year ago, that is not my story right now. But I do have a commitment to the students and to our seniors of this town. So I am going to be voting yes, because I need to ensure that we preserve our services and preserve the quality of life for Windsor, Connecticut. So Tuesday, May 13th, see you at the polls. If you need a ride, 860-980-9287. And please check out the website that's going to be shared. You can find, Mr. Furie, hold up your document. You can find all of these wonderful documents on there along with the calculators. Tuesday, May 13th, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., 860-980-9287 if you need a ride. See you at the poll, and thank you for joining us for this candid conversation on our fiscal year 2026 proposed budget and the upcoming referendum.